please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
First, get to the top story that we are tracking this Tuesday evening. CNBC TV 18 learns from top government sources that the centre has not met officials from Life Insurance Corporation of India on the alleged conflict of interest in ICICI Bank awarding loans to the Videocon group. Now remember, LIC holds a good 9.4% stake in ICICI Bank. Hence, the government is not keen to interfere as the matter is being probed right now by investigative agencies. Let's bring in Sapna Das, who has been speaking to several sources. Sapna, no meeting clearly between Centre and LIC on ICICI Bank, but what are your sources telling you?
Well, a categorical denial seems to have come in from government quarters in terms of, a possible meeting that was held between the top management of LIC and the government nominee on the ICICI Bank board. No such meeting has happened. There hasn't been any such discussion. That's what we understand from government quarters. Having said that, probably what would be of more significance is the fact that, government has also indicated that the ICICI Bank matter is, completely between the investigative agencies, the Reserve Bank of India and the bank board. So whatever needs to happen probably will happen at that level. And let's keep in mind that the investigation is still on. We really don't know which way that will go. So having said that, also the fact remains that it's the Reserve Bank of India that will have to take the final call in terms of any management changes, if at all, if they are required, if there is any change required in the leadership. And accordingly, the bank board, should be able to follow suit if the RBI decides so. Also, last month, the RBI governor had made it very clear that, they have far more flexibility and powers in terms of taking a management call for private sector banks vis-a-vis the public sector banks. The government at its end, as of now, at least completely is at an arm's length. So probably whatever has to happen will happen at the RBI's level, and one also has to wait for the investigation to get over.
Oh, absolutely. And, speaking about the investigation, here's another important development on the Videocon case. The co-promoter of Videocon Group and the brother of Venugopal Dhoot, Rajkumar Dhoot, was spotted at the Finance Ministry. Sources say he may have held a meeting with officials in the Central Board of Direct Taxes. We don't know the exact details of what transpired in that, but what you can see is visuals of Rajkumar Dhoot exiting the Finance Ministry. From the controversy in the corner office of one bank to another, Axis Bank soared in trade and ended the day up 6% after the bank's board accepted to reduce CEO Shikhar Sharma's fourth term to 6 months. Brokerages have also reacted to the new. They view the change at the top as a positive in the long run, but also add that there are no earnings triggers in the short term. In fact, talking to Shireen Bhan earlier today, former SEBI chairman M. Damodaram reacted to this very development. He said that RBI could be concerned about the mounting bad loans at Axis Bank, and if RBI wants Shikhar Sharma out, he would not like to second-guess the central bank.
I don't think it's about singling out anyone. What they would have considered would be a totality of circumstances. Asset quality certainly would be at the top of the list. They would have looked at how asset quality has deteriorated over time and whether any steps have been taken to put in place recovery measures. Has the problem been arrested? Is it on the decline? So this is a call that a regulator has taken. Mind you, she's done 3 terms of 3 years each and will be doing another term, so it's a good 10 years. And if the RBI believes that it is time for a leadership change based on all these factors, I wouldn't for one second guess the RBI on this.
In December, if they reappoint Shikhar Sharma for a tenure of 3 years, given the apprehensions then expressed by the Reserve Bank, should the board then not have been more transparent? I mean, it looks like the board is capitulated in light of what the Reserve Bank has said, perhaps not put up a strong enough defense for why it chose to give her a 3-year term in the first place. What does that speak in terms of the board?
The board's role in all of this is not very clear. It's not something that is confidence-inducing. The reason I'm saying this is that, as you said rightly, if there were valid reasons to look at a 4th term of 3 years, and the board decided that collectively, when the regulator said, sorry, we don't agree with you on that, there should have been, I'm not saying a pushback, you don't push back with a regulator, but there should have been a continuing conversation saying this is why we think she should lead the bank for 3 more years.
There was the former SEBI chairman on a whole host of issues, but probe agencies have stepped up their action against defaulters. We learned from sources that at a recent meeting of the empowered group of investigative agencies, the centre took stock of the NPA picture. Probe agencies have in fact been told to reach out to banks and do a status check of willful defaulters. That's not all. The investigative agencies have also been asked to keep a track on defaulters who fly in and out of the country regularly. Timsy Japuria is here with this important story. Timsy, the government is turning up the heat after the Nirav Modi and Mehul Choksi incident very clearly. But, you know, in terms of actual vigilance, what more can we see?
Well, that's right. What I understand from sources is the fact that in a recent meeting of empowered group of investigative agencies, which was headed by Finance Secretary Hasmukh Adhia, the investigative agencies have decided upon a new operation where they will keep on taking a status check of NPAs and list of defaulters from banks and RBI. They will match it with the list of frequent travelers with civil aviation and MEA, seek details from MEA on the case of what is the travel history of that person, why is he flying to XYZ country on a regular basis, and check with those countries what is the business interest of that defaulter with those countries. Also seek details like whether that defaulter was filing tax over there, whether the defaulter holds companies in those countries, and then check it with the list of defaulters and the tax history in India as well. They will match all this and then take a further step on investigation. A recent example of this was when today IT department has been taking a lot of raids at 16 locations of Diamonds Power Infrastructure Limited, where Sumit Bhatnagar and Amit Bhatnagar are the two alleged people who have been money laundering through Mauritius and Dubai route. They have a loan of about 2,500 crore rupees by various PSU banks, which is an NPA. So all in government is in all taking all the steps to curb NPA and money laundering. Back to you.
Okay, it's much needed measures, but you know, I'd be critical to see how exactly that does go through. But thanks, Timsy, for taking us through that. But let's get to the big global story of the day. Chinese President Xi Jinping has promised to further open up the Chinese economy. President Xi was speaking at the BOA Forum for Asia, also dubbed as the Asian Davos, earlier today. He pledged to reduce tariffs considerably on foreign cars sold in China, thereby submitting to a key demand from Donald Trump. That's not all. President Xi also vowed to reduce duties on other products and improve investment environment for international companies. Remember, his address comes amid escalating trade tensions between two of the world's largest economies, China as well as America. So how exactly are Chinese investors reacting to Xi Jinping's promises? CNBC's Martin Soong will fill us on that. But first, let's quickly take you through a snapshot of what exactly the President Xi had to say at that forum.
China will continue to adhere to its fundamental national policy of opening up and pursue development with its door wide open. I wish to make it clear to you all that China's door of opening up will not be closed and will only open even wider. Manufacturing. We have basically opened up this sector, only with a small number of exceptions on automobiles, ships, and aircraft. Now, these industries are in a position to open up. Going forward, we will ease as soon as possible foreign equity restrictions in these industries, automobiles in particular.
So today we had a bit of carrot and stick from China for the U.S. The stick first, the Chinese filing a complaint at the WTO against America's Section 232 tariffs on steel and aluminum. And the carrot, well, just hours before that, a sweeping speech by the Chinese President Xi Jinping opening up China's economy further to foreign investment, sectors like shipbuilding, sectors like aircraft, and most conspicuously, sectors like autos. Now, President Xi also said he would lower tariffs on U.S. autos imported into China, apparently in direct response to President Trump's tweet just about a day and a bit ago, criticizing trade with China as silly trade and also complaining about excessively high Chinese tariffs on U.S. autos imported into China, saying that both initiatives would happen this year. Now, the question is whether these initiatives are enough and also whether they'll come soon enough to avert or avoid a trade war, the situation escalating. That's the big open question. So far, no response from the Trump administration. Martin Soong, CNBC, Boao, China.
All right, thanks, Martin, for taking us through that. We will take a very short commercial break on that note. But up next, 4 days before the resolution deadline, lenders to debt-ridden Monitor Spot agree on a buyer. Who is it? We'll tell you after the break. We told you first, and now it's official. With just days to go before the deadline for Monnet Ispat's insolvency resolution ends, bankers have cleared the resolution plan submitted by the Aeon JSW Steel Consortium for the company. Now, cnbc TV 18's Ritu Singh broke that story earlier today, and she's here with the details. Ritu, as soon as you broke that story, the stock reacted almost 6 to 7%. There was a confirmation finally. How much haircut will banks have to take eventually?
That's right, with just 4 days to go for the 270-day deadline for resolution under IBC for Monnet Ispat to end, the lenders to Monnet Ispat have approved the resolution plan submitted by Aeon and JSW Consortium. Now, under this offer, banks will have to take about 72% haircut on the 10,000 crore rupee debt that Monnet Ispat currently has. Now, we understand in the voting that concluded this morning, 98% of the lenders have voted in favor of this proposal. Now, what is the offer exactly? We understand from sources that Aeon JSW has offered about 2750 crore rupees in repayment to lenders. Additionally, they've also offered 1050 crore rupees as equity infusion in the company, taking the haircut that the banks will have to take to 72%. So this is the final nod as far as the lenders and the resolution professional is concerned. Now this proposal will be placed before the NCLT for that final nod.
Okay, Ritu, fair enough. Thanks for joining in with that. Now, moving on to the power space, India's power sector is staring at a major bad loan crisis. The government is working with the banks to salvage at least some cases, as the Power Secretary Ajay Bhalla. He spoke exclusively to CNBC TV 18 after a report by CRISIL raised many eyebrows. The report revealed that about 51,000 megawatts worth of power capacity in the country could be staring at liquidation. This after RBI's recent announcement that any default on loans worth over 2,000 crore rupees must be sent to the Company Law Tribunal by the 30th of September. Now, out of the 51,000 megawatt capacity that is stressed, about 9,000 megawatt belong to Tata Power and Adani Power. Barring those, 42,800 megawatt capacity is plagued by problems due to coal or gas supply and the lack of power purchase agreements. The Power Secretary promised that not all cases will end up in liquidation, and he also assured that the government is working with the banks to save some of these stressed assets.
You will be okay with 32,000 megawatts going for liquidation? Not NCLT, liquidation.
Yeah, I'm saying it is not go to NCLT also. Some of these plants are under already restructuring with the bankers, and it was under restructuring in the previous, before the RBI circular. So bankers, some of the places, bankers are hopeful.
From that APPAI list, which you must be very familiar with, how many do you think can be salvaged, and how many may go to NCLT and liquidation?
It's very difficult to put numbers. As I said, each plant has a different problem. In some places, the DISCOM dues could be a problem, and there we are intervening and trying to get the DISCOMs release payments to these plants. In some cases, the equity has run dry. I mean, bankers are looking at a new owner. Like this, there are different baskets. I mean, one has to look at what can be retrieved and what cannot be.
So, sir, we take your point that all of it will not go for liquidation. Can you leave us with a rough ratio where you think that within the NCLT process there will be resolution? There will be buyers, and some of the issues, whether it's PPAs, whether it's coal availability, or DISCOM payments, will be able to intervene and solve. So therefore, the new buyer has reason to buy the asset. And what might the residual that might end up in liquidation?
No, I mean, very difficult to say. As I said, some of the plants where construction has just started and nothing much is available on the ground, bankers also won't be able to find a solution to it. So those plants definitely go to NCLT. But the plants which are commissioned, which are having some financial issues, bankers can retrieve it. And whatever assistance is required from the government is willing to provide that.
Okay, let's get to the big court action of the day. The Supreme Court reprimanded Centre for not utilising 1 lakh crore under campus funds. Remember, these funds are collected from miners to compensate for the ecological damage. The Apex Court has now asked government to clarify the usage of these funds. Ashmit Kumar is here with what transpired in the courtroom today. Ashmit, what were the concerns that were raised by the Supreme Court, and what is the clarity with respect to when we are going to see this case move forward?
Right, so the centre finding itself in the eye of a storm as far as the 1 lakh crore rupee Campa funds are concerned. Now, what are these funds? Well, as the name suggests, Campa funds or compensatory afforestation funds are basically charges that are levied under various subheads or mostly on private entities who in the process of industrial projects indulge in deforestation. Now, the reason that the Apex Court took objection was that in the course of the hearing, it computed that that figure should have tallied up to nearly 1 lakh crore rupees over the years, and that there has been little or no deployment of funds. funds. That was the core concern of the Apex Court that it put across to the centre in a sharp way. It raised some very pointed observations. And the Apex Court observed that it had trusted the executive with the deployment of funds, but that trust is no longer there. The Apex Court also observed that there are vast sums of money, nearly 1 lakh crore rupees, yet there has been little or no utilization of funds. It also went on to observe that it's tragic that despite there being the availability of funds, the mere act of implementing, of deploying those funds hasn't been forthcoming from either the centre or the state governments. Finally going on to say that, and also clarifying, warning the centre that these funds should not be used for other developmental works, but solely, as the name suggests, for afforestation. So on the back of that, two-part directions being issued by the centre. It has directed the MOEF to give a detailed analysis of the funds that have been collected over the years and to submit a final figure before the Apex Court. And secondly, to also submit a comprehensive plan as to how these funds will be used in the future. The hearing in this case, we understand, will continue on May 9th. Back to you.
Okay, Ashman, May 9th is an important day when we could see some clarity here. But let's move on to another important story. Finance ministers of 4 southern states met in Trivandrum to discuss their concerns and the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission. The terms of reference has recommended that instead of the 1971 census, 2011 census should be used to calculate the population for allocation of union tax revenue. Now, South Indian states meanwhile feel that this would adversely affect them. We caught up with the finance ministers of Kerala and Andhra Pradesh. They told us that at present, the terms of reference mentioned in the 15th Finance Commission were unacceptable.
If this Finance Commission is allowed to have its way on the basis of the present TOR, there would be unacceptable, stringent conditions on the states. Even tax devolution there could be. Never in the history of India has the tax devolution been subjected to conditionality.
Just either have to take back this terms of reference or to amend the terms of reference to some extent in order to benefit the states which perform very well. All terms of each terms of reference is one way or the other is going to hit the state governments revenues. So if state governments revenues are hit and state governments are left without any revenues, how can we take up these popular schemes?
Minister Italy has reacted to this row over the terms of reference for the Finance Commission. In a post on social media platform Facebook, the Finance Minister has called it a needless controversy, adding that nothing could be further from the truth. He has written, and I'm quoting now, the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission rightly balance both the needs represented by latest population and progress towards population control very well. There is no inherent bias or mandate in the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission, which can be construed as discriminatory against the states which made good progress in population control. End of quote. Let's move on to another important international story. Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg will head to Capitol Hill to testify before the US Congress tonight. He will testify at 11:45 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Remember, Facebook has been under fire after data breach by Cambridge Analytica. CNBC's Julia Burstyn filed this report on what to expect from Zuckerberg's testimony.
Certainly a big day for Mark Zuckerberg as he faces senators who've been demanding answers about Facebook's failures, including its lack of privacy safeguards and the outside use of the platform to manipulate elections. Yesterday, he started his rounds on Capitol Hill, meeting with Senators John Thune, Chuck Grassley, and Bill Nelson, who told reporters that the two had a, quote, heart-to-heart, and that he thinks there are going to be, quote, a lot of challenges for Facebook in the future. Just hours from now, Zuckerberg will testify for the first time in front of the Senate Judiciary and Commerce Committees. In prepared remarks released yesterday, Zuckerberg apologizes, explains what went wrong, and outlines Facebook's plans to prevent election interference on the platform in situations like the sale of as many as 87 million users' data to Cambridge Analytica, saying, quote, it was my mistake and I'm sorry. I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here. Zuckerberg will highlight changes the company is making, including safeguarding the platform by limiting the information developers can access, investigating other apps, and building better controls so these situations don't happen again. And when he takes the stand, we can expect senators to press Zuckerberg about whether Facebook is doing enough to prevent scandals similar to Cambridge Analytica and how many other cases there could be and whether its users' data is really safe. Zuckerberg is likely to reiterate the company's plans to hire many more people, to have as many as 20,000 by the end of the year, just focused on security and investment in security that will significantly impact profitability.
Okay, so today is going to be a very critical day. So even as we await Zuckerberg's testimony, over the last few months, several big faces have come out and spoken out against Facebook's policies. Here's a look back at a few of those criticisms.
The idea that fake news on Facebook, of which it's a very small amount of the content, influence the election in any way, I think is a pretty crazy idea.
I think the tools that have been created today are starting to erode the social fabric of how society works.
When the CEOs won't take responsibility, okay, then I think you have no choice. But for the government to come in and go, come on, what's going on?
I think that the management of Facebook right now is committing malpractice.
People don't want to go work for a company like Facebook that people perceive is destroying society.
We need to hear from him, the sooner the better, and I expect him to testify.
I think people have the right to know what it is and where it is and how it's controlled and why it's controlled. And I think it's true for all these data providers.
Well, Mark Zuckerberg, what would you do?
What would I do? I wouldn't be in the situation.
Is he going to behave like an adult as a major corporate leader, or give me this phony baloney? What is it, hoodies and dungarees, and what is that kind of signal sell?
This was a huge breach of trust. People come to Facebook every day, and they depend upon us to protect their data, and I am so sorry.
This was a major breach of trust, and I'm really sorry that this happened.
Okay, that 11:45 timeline is going to be something all of us will be watching for to understand exactly what defense Mark Zuckerberg does put forth. We will have to end this edition of What's Hot. Many thanks for watching this show. Coming up next is Quarter Se Quarter Tak, a CNBC TV 18 curtain raise on what can be expected from the fourth quarter earnings season. We'll be back in 30 minutes with India Business Hour and the top news stories of the day. Stay right there.